Hi and welcome to this sort of Facebook Live chat with Rana Ayyub. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan, one of the founding editors of The Wire. And Gujarat Files, the book that Rana Ayyub, investigative journalist, recently published, has been the talk of the town. Ever since it was released last week, it's generated a lot of interest and revived, if you will, discussions on the Gujarat 2002 killings and many of the fake encounters that happened during the time that Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat. Issues that the media as a whole has tended to ignore or bury over the last 2 years. Rana Ayyub's book has, in a way, brought many of these issues back to the fore. Joining me to discuss the contents of the book, its methodology, the controversies that it has triggered, and of course to handle questions that you, the audience, will have. We've already received some questions. Is the author herself, Rana Ayyub. Welcome to this discussion on The Wire. Before we plunge into the questions, why don't you give readers a sense of what the book contains? Because you posed as an undercover journalist, undercover filmmaker,
yeah.
named Maithili Tyagi.
Yeah.
And you essentially, the book consists of a series of interviews, or I should say the base material are a series of interviews that you conducted surreptitiously with some of the key dramatis personae, a lot of senior police officers who had important positions during the 2002 riots or were involved in one way or the other with some of the fake encounters. So you, in a way, gained their confidence, you had these extended chats and you recorded them, and you have, in a way, crafted a book out of these transcripts.
Right.
So, what emerges out of these transcripts? Is it compelling evidence of state complicity in the commission of crimes, or is it do they provide pointers to what a serious investigation ought to look into, were the state to actually be interested in justice? How would you describe the key takeaway of your book?
See, the key takeaway from my book, and one of the lines that P.C. Pandey, who was the Commissioner of Police during the 2002 riots, says, कि उन्होंने हमको 3 बार दिया, हमने 1 बार दिया, अच्छा लगा.
What does he mean, unhone?
The Muslims.
Okay.
उन्होंने 3 बार दिया, हमने 1 बार दिया. So this is the kind of mindset that prevailed amongst the officers and the bureaucrats. Not all, I must say, but those who did not. This was the mindset that was prevalent in Gujarat, and this was not just in 2002, but also throughout. I mean, every time you saw a fake encounter in Gujarat, you had officers like DG Vanzara and the entire tribe, of course, 4 or 5 80s officers who would take a press conference with all those dead bodies saying Narendra Modi, the Hindu Hriday Samrat, is under threat from the jihadists. And there was a narrative which was built around, these FIRs and charge sheets. So when I went undercover, when I spoke to the likes of GL Singhal, and he said something very important. He's a Dalit, he and Rajan Priyadarshi was next APS chief, both Dalits. He said, इन्होंने हमको इस्तेमाल करके फेंक दिया, use and throw किया हमारा. हमसे तो काम करवा लेते थे, मतलब ये fake encounters वगैरह. And they just didn't stand by when they wanted to. I mean, Vanzara, now he has come out, now he's out of jail and now he might be reinstated. I mean, of course, he's not in service anymore. P.P. Pandey has been, as he's now the new DG of police, despite being absconded by the state. Mota is आपने कहा, Rajan Priyadarshi says, I was the APS chief when Amit Shah called me and said, आपके जेल में वो बंदा उसको उड़ा दो, as Home Minister of the state. And later goes on to say, why can't you do this? Because we kept Ishrat in our farm for 2 days. Now these are not, this cannot be just pushed aside saying it is all hearsay. We have the APS chief who is saying these things.
Now, Priyadarshi subsequently joined the Congress party, but at that time he did not have those kinds of affiliations. Okay.
Yes. At that point of time, he had just retired from his position, and he spoke to me. I mean, I had no inkling that he would join the Congress at that point of time. GL Singhal's son committed suicide a year later because he could not take the pressure that his father was facing from the government. And when I met GL Singhal, he said, my family is under tremendous pressure, and I don't like what I'm doing right now. It was Singhal, in fact, who later gave the CBI a sting operation we conducted around the same time as the Ishrat Jahan investigation, in which the Home Secretary and Tushar Mehta and the likes are seen discussing, obfuscating the process of investigation.
Right.
So in a way, all these officers who have said various things to me also end up validating what the CBI has been saying in its charge sheets. You see GC Raigar was the intelligence chief in the 2002 riots and later also deposed before the CBI. He tells me when I ask him, I mean, of course, we had various conversations before, I was Maitri Tyagi, a filmmaker who was naive, who did not know what was happening in the state. But luckily I happened to be in the state when, when there were arrests happening, the newspapers would be full of Sohrabuddin and Ishwar Jahan. So Raigar told me, I'm going through a very tough time. I mean, what happened hurt my conscience, what I was asked to do. I mean, these men, Amit Shah and Modi, are ruthless people. They will ask me to do certain things which hurt my conscience. Which is why during the Sohrabuddin investigation probe, I got a transfer because I did not want to do things the way Amit Shah wanted me to do.
Right.
So still such time that I was there, the investigation went the way it should have been. Yeah. But the moment I left, others came into the investigation. Yeah. That's when it went the other way. Yeah. You have the likes of Ashok Narayan, who was the Home Secretary of Gujarat during the 2002 riots. Now he held one of the most significant positions. He was there at the meeting that Modi held, when allegedly he said certain things which have not come out. Because I don't think any.
This is the February 27th night meeting that Sanjeev Bhatt has alleged he was part of. Harin Pandya also in
but
the way
nobody
spoke
has,
about it. But
nobody has corroborated Sanjeev Bhatt's
presence
in the meeting and also the alleged evidence that he has provided. I also, of course, at that point of time had my apprehensions because none of those officers, you can have one officer who might object to Sanjeev or two officers, but all the 10 officers who are in a consensus on the involvement of Amit Shah and Narendra Modi cannot go wrong in Sanjeev Bhatt. Right. So that's a grey area that the book delves in. It does not take a position on it, but it states facts as they are.
Let's just step back for a second. But now, I mean, I read the book, and essentially, you chose the device of sting operation of surreptitious recordings, which is, it raises ethical issues because you are winning the confidence of people. In a way, they're speaking to you under false pretenses. Your identity is hidden. The purpose of your project is hidden. What are, to your mind, some of the ethical issues that, or ethical concerns that this kind of methodology raises? Because it's not considered, day-to-day journalistic practice to do this.
To begin with,
so why did you choose this
To
way?
begin with, a sting, contents of a sting operation after they go through the forensics are now acceptable under the Evidence Act by the courts. Having said that, this was the last resort. I mean, I wouldn't want any journalist to use it for the most frivolous. Most of them use it because they believe in the school of lazy journalism. When you have nothing else to do, you go and sting a police officer. This was. You have to understand the context in which the sting operation was done. My investigation had got Amit Shah behind bars in 2010. I was in Gujarat. I mean, I was not a Gujarat reporter, but I realized that the officers who gave me the documents in the Amit Shah case were reluctant to speak.
This is in regard to Ishwar Jahan?
No, this is in regard to Sohrabuddin encounter.
Right.
But after Amit Shah went behind bars, there were many who started speaking, not just about not just about the Sohrabuddin encounter, but one significant case that I had been investigating during the time was the Harin Pandya murder. Because Harin Pandya's father, Harin Pandya's wife had raised these questions that there were many loopholes in the Harin Pandya investigation that needed to be reinvestigated. I realized it was very difficult when Modi was the chief minister to get any of the officers who had not even said the truth before the Nanavati Commission because they were clearly very scared of the dispensation. Now, they did not speak.
And we know that many of them were poached and so on.
Yes. So if they did not speak to the Nanavati Commission, how could I, a Tehelka journalist who at any given point of time carries a sting camera, speak to them? It was very difficult for me. I tried every possible way of getting hold of documents. I did as and when. I got the call records. I got the sting tape which Singhal had done during the process. But still, there was a lot more that needed to be investigated. And this.
So you felt this is something compellingly in the public interest?
It was, of course
and that was driving this.
Yes.
And obviously, I presume your editors at the time were fully behind and backing.
Absolutely. I think the first time I did my first sting was on the investigating officer on in the Harin Pandya case. I messaged my immediate editors, Tarun and Shoma, and they wrote back saying, "Excellent, this is brilliant investigation. It's got a kind of this is going to be the biggest sensation in the country.
Right.
So, it was very promising. I thought, okay, this investigation is yielding results towards justice, and it is quite dispelling the myths that around the entire Gujarat, the vibrant Gujarat agenda.
Now, you say in the book, of course, that your editors finally chose not to run it. They aren't here, so we will leave that.
Yes,
we will leave that part of the discussion out. But we have a question from a reader or a viewer who says, what made you write this book after Modi became PM? This question comes from Vijay.
I've been trying to write this book since 2012. It's just that I found no takers. I had a contract with the publishing house, and they got out of the contract in 2014 Jan when they realized that Modi was almost on his way to become the Prime Minister. A lot of political parties approached me in 2014 April. I'm talking about the mainstream political parties, and I refused because they had heard that publication house had refused to publish my book, and I said I'm not going to do it around the time of elections because this is not a political exercise.
In fact, had you published the book before the elections,
they would say, oh, this is a
question saying why did you choose to publish it before the elections?
Exactly, and I did not do it later during the Delhi elections because they would have said, oh, she's an AAPS too, she's doing it at the behest of AAP, and then Bihar elections, and then I waited for every possible election to get out of my way before I published.
So what you're saying is that you did this work well before 2014.
Yes.
It might even have come out in 2012 or 2013, but for the fact that publishers wedged on an agreement.
Absolutely.
And now you worked in it and you brought it. Tell me something about your decision to self-publish. Is it because publishers found this material too hot to handle?
The first publisher who eased out of this book contract, once wrote me a mail saying, the moment the book is out, we will have to find other avenues to, our other job because Modi is going to shut our office. I mean, it was an informal chat. So I could figure where the other publisher who got in touch with me earlier this year, when she figured that I was trying to self-publish the book, she said, why are you self-publishing it? We will publish your book. And the lawyers sat on it for about 3 months, and they kept on buying time from me, and I knew exactly where it was going because one of the literary agents called me and said, listen. So I could figure. I mean, I'm not going to see. I'm speaking from a position of privilege because I do not belong to an organization anymore. I'm an independent journalist. I do not have many liabilities, so to say. I mean, they have to run organizations. Perhaps this is what forces them to not publish it. But from my end, I had to get it out of my system because, I mean, you cannot really sit on this kind of evidence. And this has been with me since 2010, 2011, and this is compelling evidence. Right. So I thought I had to self-publish it.
So we have a question from Aarti Nair, who says, it was thrilling to read your accounts in Gujarat Files, but I've realized that your supporters also will have to taste the bitter media trolls like you have to. I've been reading all the ugly things they've been writing. It hurts to see such good work being disrespected. Do you at times feel like answering back, or do you just ignore them completely? So this is a question about how you handle trolls, of which you've had many.
Ignore them. I think they humor me after a point of time. I know exactly where they're coming from. I think it's a syndicate of paid trolls. So I do not quite. I mean, it's the part of their job. So I do not quite give much importance to them because the book is not about the trolls. I mean, I know it's a sensitive book, so I know there will be many detractors, and it comes with a package. The trolls come with a package, so you have to deal with it.
The interesting thing is that the book doesn't offer a neat or comforting narrative for no matter which side of the debate you're on, right? I mean, I read your interview with Maya Kurnani, for example, who was the one VIP, as it were, the one BJP minister convicted by a court for involvement in the Naroda Patia massacre. And the picture that emerges from that conversation is of a person wronged, who says, well, I've been made a scapegoat. And I'm sure there are many people who are convinced about her guilt who would not be comfortable reading that kind of material. Similarly, your chapter on Ashok Narayan, for example, who was the Home Secretary, in a way establishes his presence in the February 27th meeting, but he says Sanjeev Bhatt was not there. If you are a critic of Narendra Modi and you have been used to looking at certain individuals or certain dramatis personae to corroborate Modi's guilt in your mind, this book doesn't offer a neat solution. I mean, there are things that will leave you wondering, well, why did she put that in?
Yeah.
But I think in a way this speaks to the to the fact that the truth is really quite complex.
Absolutely. I've always felt that truth and facts in Gujarat have always been very complex. One, some of them have been hijacked by NGOs and political parties for their own benefit, and that's why I have reasons to believe that the Gujarat narrative is very complex and twisted, and often the truth has to be seen in those grey areas.
Yeah.
I do not really believe in the narrative put out by the NGOs operating out of Gujarat. I'm not trying to make a I'm not trying to generalize saying all NGOs are bad, but a few of them did try to get in their narrative. For instance, a lot of congressmen messaged me and said, "Why have you put that bit on Sanjeev?" But I said, "Listen, the book is not about Congress. The book is about the truth, and I have to put every bit of the book, every bit of the tape out there.
Yeah.
Whether it suits your narrative, it does not suit your narrative. It's not my problem at the end of the day. As a journalist, I'm putting out everything that the tapes, through. And if Sanjeev Bhatt, if it throws light on Sanjeev Bhatt and the fact that he was lying, then I would leave it to the investigating agencies. I think, I have done my job as a journalist. I have recorded whatever I could. Now it's up to the investigating agencies. The Supreme Court monitored CBI, which is looking into the riots. The Supreme Court monitored SIT, the Raghavan SIT, which should basically now look at this, these tapes and kind of understand, what.
Since the book has come out, have any of these agencies which are still, the Raghavan SIT's filed a closure report,
Yes,
but in a way, the matter is still alive because the appeal of Mr. Jaffrey is pending, and we don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah.
But has any investigative agency of any kind contacted you to get this material?
None so far. None of the investigating agencies have approached me. In fact, I would like them to approach me, or for that matter, the new Tehelka team, because the tapes are with them. I do have a copy of the tape, but the master tapes are with them, or perhaps the ex-editors who were then looking into the investigation. So I think they should certainly approach Tehelka, for the tapes and ask them for all the evidence, so that people of this country know what exactly went wrong in Gujarat, rather than it leaning onto any political. It should not be made into a Congress, BJP, or Aam Aadmi Party or left back. It's not about that. The book is about justice for all those who suffered in Gujarat.
Right.
Yeah.
And likewise, okay. So let me just read So there's a question from Devarshi Ghosh.
Mm-hmm.
What are the risks an investigative journalist such as yourself can or has to face on a minute-to-minute basis in the line of duty? How do you deal with the fear of getting caught because you were hiding your identity and recording people without them being aware? Lastly, were there any instances where you came close to getting caught? I think this is a question many people have in their minds. This is you're dealing with powerful and slightly dangerous people. So what kind of risks did you have to?
So I had to befriend many cops in Gujarat to basically help give a cover to my identity as Maithili Tyagi. So I socialized with a lot of them, including one of the officers called Usha Radha, who tried to be very friendly with me. She would take me out for movies. On one of those occasions, she took me out to watch a film called No One Killed Jessica, which was about a Tehelka investigation. I said, "Oh, these Tehelka rogues, if I find them at any day, I'll just slap them." I was sitting right next to her, knowing very well that On another occasion, when we went to watch a movie, I had worn a kurta and I had no idea that she would go take me for a movie. And the kurta had a sting camera, and I could have been caught immediately by the metal detector, but for those cops who said, "No, ma'am, Usha ma'am does not need to go through a security check." So there have been many such occasions. I stayed in a deserted bungalow for a good month with just a dog for company and a snake which would lurk out every evening, because it almost became like my savior. So there was always this fear, that my lens would fall off, or, somebody, I had reported from Gujarat, somebody would recognize me, somebody would figure out who I was. There was always this fear of being caught at any given point of time. So I became used to sleeping pills. I was never on sleeping pills earlier. I'm now a sleeping pill addict because of, what I went through in Gujarat. Yeah.
Aditya Keskar has an interesting question. Was it difficult to conduct the sting once you got so intimately involved with the people on the tapes and their personal lives? I also felt that, for example, the kind of trust that Mrs. Ashok Narayan showed you, for example.
Yeah.
So how difficult was it to get around? Obviously you were driven by a sense that what you are doing is in the public interest, and that there is a larger truth that needs to be told, which justifies this kind of deception, as it were. But at a personal level, it would have been hard to navigate this kind of sentiment.
It hurt my conscience each night. I almost used to, I almost broke down when I called up my mother, and, on 2 occasions that I would call her from a PSU, and I said that what I'm doing is, it's ethically wrong. These people trust me, they call me their daughter. I mean, when I'm sick, they take care of me. I mean, what I'm doing is wrong. She said, if they really had a conscience, they would have divorced and they would have said the truth before the commissions. And now, as you clearly say, they did not. And this is the only way out. You're not doing it for them, or you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the larger public good. And this is what I did. I mean, it used to hurt me. It used to hurt me every day that, we're a singular Mrs. Narayan, she become so fond of me. Every day she would look forward to having me at home. She would serve me home-cooked food. So it was very difficult. I mean, including my Akhil Nani, who once oiled my hair because I had a bad headache. So it was horrible. I mean, as a journalist, I don't want any journalist to go through this kind of experience or a modern dilemma, whether they're doing the right thing or not.
Right. Okay, so Santosh Kumar Kulkunda says, Namaskar, madam. First of all, we thank you for the great work you have done, and we appreciate your courage in bringing the truth, which I believe. My question is, what made you risk your life when all and including the whole system is compromised with truth? So in other words, I guess what he's getting at, what Santosh Kumar is getting at is that even when you plunged into this and you knew that top cops and others are not willing to speak the truth, and willing to go on record, Nanavati Commission you gave as an example, surely you knew that even the fruits of this hazardous enterprise were unlikely to actually yield any justice. So what is it that made you do this kind of thing when there were plenty of reasons to assume that even if you were to get great evidence, this wouldn't really amount to
a ray of hope for me was that just before I started this undercover operation, the Supreme Court's appointed CBI had sent Amit Shah behind bars on the basis of the investigation that they had carried out. So I thought if we could send, if the Supreme Court of this country was firmly behind the investigation that was carried under its supervision, then there is a real hope for people who are. So if I can present evidence, clinching evidence, so I was sure that the Supreme Court appointed CBI society would look into that bit of evidence, because I was assuming that I would be back in the city with my investigation in 2011. By then the investigation was still on. If I had perhaps presented this at that point of time, this could have well been a part of the evidence.
Right. Another question, do you feel in some way that people on the tapes were trying to absolve themselves of their mistakes and clear their conscience? Did you feel like some sort of outlet for their guilt? I mean, I often felt, Ashok Narayan, for example, who in many ways emerges as a very complex character.
So does Chakravarti.
Chakravarti also, but Chakravarti is, he's one of those who airs his communal biases, so it's quite distasteful to read that. It's distressing that a senior policeman can have such kind of garden variety hatred or prejudice towards Muslims.
So does PC Pandey.
Pandey as well.
Yeah. So these are people. See, I know they almost absolve themselves, but if you look at what they have said to the Nanavati Commission and what they have said to the TFs, they clearly come out as people who do not really have the spine to stand up for the truth. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say in this, in this book, that these are the people who you trusted with the investigation. These are the likes of PC Pandey. I mean, for instance, you have the investigating officer in the Harin Pandya case. He knew the truth. He said, he's an investigating officer who signed the FIR. He says the man who killed Harin Pandya was in our custody. Now, why didn't he speak about this to the public? If he was in custody, he should have, as an investigating officer, he should have spoken to the CBI, which was appointed by the Supreme Court. I fail to understand why these people didn't speak. So, they might have been, they might have made an attempt to try and absolve them, but in the process, I think they're ending up incriminating them because what they have told to various commissions of inquiry is completely contradictory to what they're telling me. So it kind of, lays them bare in front of people and their truth.
Okay, so interesting question from Manisha Chachra, who says, do you think your identity of being a woman and a Muslim influenced the investigative process? Any obstructions as such? Also, although you played the role of Maithili Tyagi, were you able to completely get immersed in this character and let go other essential aspects of being a Muslim woman? So I suppose here, cultural, for example, Maithili Tyagi as an NRI may not be used to using Urdu words, for example,
I did not,
or a bit of Sher o Shairi, which I know in
your
personal life.
So
how difficult was it to suppress those parts in the character?
So when Ashok Narayan used to recite these Urdu couplets, I had I would want to reply to him in another Urdu couplet, but I would pretend, okay, that's Greek to me. I didn't quite understand that bit, but I would understand, and I'd say, if you say something in Sanskrit, I might understand, but again, I'm a Firang, I'm not really stayed in India. My father is is a Sanskrit professor, and he also ran an RSS Shaka, so that kind of. But I was mentally tyagi for those months.
And also, when some of these people said pretty awful things about Muslims,
Yeah,
you were careful not to get.
Yeah, not at all. I would get, in fact, I would be blushing, glowing when they said those things because I was mentally tyagi. So I lived the life of mentally. I'd hang around with those photographers and filmmakers from Gujarat who in a way, idolized Narendra Modi, and I would go on to say, hey, he's a great guy, and I lived her life. For those 8 months, I wasn't Rana Ayyub at all.
Right.
Rana Ayyub would only come into the picture when I would go to sleep and I'd tell myself, okay, now I have to transfer the footage back in the hard disk. That's the only time Rana Ayyub came in the picture.
Now, Senthil Kumar asks, the same people you investigated are at par in the center. Do you sense any danger to your life now after the publication of the book? I think this is many of your well-wishers probably have the same question.
I really haven't sensed that yet.
Let's not say danger to life, but legal danger or other kinds of challenges or dangers.
Yeah, before I published the book, I spoke to one of my friends from the legal fraternity, and she said, you know what, they might just file a case from Guwahati or perhaps from West Bengal, and you will have to travel to various places, and every officer might file a case of defamation against you or criminal trespassing, etc., etc. How many cases are you going to file? I mean, it's going to be it's not going to be a physical. They won't do physical harm to you, but it's going to be a mentally agonizing period. But so far, well, I've not really. I've seen whatever I could. I mean, in the last 5 years, when during most of my investigation, I've seen whatever mental stress that they could have possibly got me into. So now I think I'm pretty much ready for any kind of case because I have truth on my side. So I think I can deal with it.
Right. Daljit Singh asks, Rana, you've consistently said that you will wait for investigative agencies to approach you for the evidence at your disposal or at the Tehelka's disposal. This is rather amusing, given that these agencies report to the very people whose interests are compromised by your investigation.
For the last, yeah.
So why not go all out, protectively, as he says, legally and politically, and ensure that your work is counted? I guess what Daljit is saying is, why don't you put these tapes in the public domain, which in a way then would add pressure. Perhaps the courts may take so much notice rather than leaving it to the CBI or SIT or Gujarat Police to come to you.
Since 2011, I've been consistently, I've approached every media organization in this country to kind of help me with publishing it, but all of them refused to. So now that the book is out, I have to take every step, very cautiously. I have to take the fact that, at the end of the day, this is the Tehelka property, and I have to take every legal aspect, before I put out the tapes on YouTube. I think it is the first right of refusal will go to Tehelka because it's Tehelka property. Once Tehelka refuses to publish or hand these tapes over or publish them, that's when I will come in the picture and I will basically give my hard disk. Because you have to understand, I do not work with any organization. I'm by myself. Right. I do not have any legal resources. I don't have a lawyer to represent me. So at this point of time, I will need that kind of help and support. So I will go through the legal process. I will appreciate if the courts take so more notice of the transcripts and approach the Tehelka and ask them for the tapes. And if they do not cooperate, then of course I will be more than happy to hand over the tapes.
Right. Okay, G.N. Parry asks, I appreciate the risk you took to bring out the truth, but are sting operations the best solution always? Where does one draw the line between an open investigation and a sting operation when issues such as ethics are involved? Did you face such moral dilemmas? In a way, we
have discussed this. I think it should be the last resort for any journalist.
Right. But there will obviously be situations where sting operations will be completely inappropriate.
Absolutely. I mean, I see them all the time on television, and it feels very nauseous to see them doing a sting on a constable or on taking a bribe for 5,000 rupees. I think it's a norm. But I mean, these are not issues for which you need to do a sting operation, or whether or retailers are hiking the prices of vegetables. I think these are issues you do not use as sting. Sting has to be used as the last resort only for larger public.
So when information cannot be obtained through other means and there is compelling public interest, I think that's a reasonable standard.
Yeah.
I had said at the start that I didn't really want to get into a tutu-meme with your former editors, but there is a question that Anisha Datta has asked. She says, Shobha Chaudhary recently tweeted saying that your story, quote, wasn't published in Tehelka because it didn't meet editorial standards and not because there was political pressure, unquote. Were you told the same at the time? Also, why didn't you release the tapes independently after? Well, the tapes belong to Tehelka, but was this what were the reasons given to you as to why the story can't be carried?
Well, I was given too many reasons, and I will perhaps, it will be unfair on me, because they are not here to defend themselves, to to talk about the emails that were exchanged between me and the organization. But I was told that this is not good enough material, and nobody will buy it in the sense that no viewer, no reader will buy it, and it does not fit their editorial standards. I know Tarun and Shoma are extremely senior journalists, that they have more years of experience than me. But clearly, going by the number of reviews that are coming and the number of people who are reading and lauding the work, I think I should be assured that my editorial judgment at that point of time was, in the right space. Yeah.
Abdul Aziz asks, or he says, very brave work indeed, but at 3 places you have belittled Ashish Khetan's work, stating that he spoke to some small-time goons. We appreciate your courage, but his work was commendable too. Do you feel betrayed by Tehelka, and can we share screenshots of your book? Anyway, yeah.
No, I think it's not about right. I was just trying to draw an analogy because, when we run a sting operation, I was just talking about how Ashish had to do sting on, people who were rabid bigots. I was talking to people who were trained bureaucrats and diplomats. Right. To elicit the truth from them is a lot more difficult than perhaps to these bigots who it's easier comparatively. So I was trying to compare the situations at that point of time, not to trying to.
So you're not running anybody down.
Not at all. In fact, in the book, I have not tried to make any personal allegations.
In fact, some of his things, particularly the Godhra.
Yes,
where some of
although he was the investigations editor when Tarun and Shoma refused, but that's something I leave to their judgment and discretion.
Okay. Manira Chaudhary asks, keeping in mind that you had to publish the book yourself because no publishing house would touch it, and even that Tehelka had abandoned it, do you think there is any space in the mainstream for dissent, or for presenting a well-investigated criticism of the government without inviting attacks and threats to life? Who will back the investigative journalists and provide them with necessary support to bring out the truth? You didn't back out or back down, but I'm sure many do under the immense political and management pressure. So how in other words, how general is the experience that you went through? Is this kind of pressure mounting?
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues who I worked with in the past have faced this kind of discrimination. I mean, this kind of pressure, whether it is in the coal scam or whether it is in the mining business or or dealing with this big business houses. There has been tremendous pressure from the advertisers who advertise in the organization, in the magazine or the organization where I've worked in the past. And this is very common in today's day and age. And I wish I had an answer for her. It's very difficult. I mean, I call myself an independent journalist, and perhaps because I do not have many obligations towards anybody that I can perhaps put out my work, but not many can do that, and there are very few who can. I'm glad that all these organizations like Wire and Caravan and Scroll actually helped publishing served that day and helped get the truth out. But there are very few mainstream outlets who are willing to publish this kind of work.
We've received a couple of comments from readers or viewers saying that the audio is not clear. So I just want to alert our engineers to look into this, please. Ajit Sarwade says, how has the response been from opposition parties? Has anybody tried to look into this issue, or are they part of this conspiracy narrative? Let's get the second part. But opposition parties, I know that many parties will try to piggyback on, and in a way, this also is one way to undermine the credibility of your enterprise, because you are clearly not driven by wanting to support one party or the other.
And I do not want any political party to be a part of any political party and their help at this point of time. All I want is judicial help in this, and I want the courts to. I mean, I don't want to piggyback on. Take help from any opposition party, whether it is the left or the AAP or the Congress. I mean, you weren't there all this while. I mean, you were in power. I mean, you could have done what. So, I mean, if they can, I think all they can is not perhaps raise their voice against the injustice right now, but I do not expect much from political parties, I think, at this point of time.
And there's a question about whether anybody from the BJP or any of the dramatis personae approached you after the book has come out? Has
not at all.
Ashok Narayan or Ryder or Pandey, Chakravarti,
none of them. None of them.
How did you tape us? How did you? There's been no feedback or response.
None so far. None so far.
Right. Are you surprised by that?
Not really.
Not for the BJP, but I'm saying.
No, I don't think they would. I don't think they would do that because they're in a very sensitive position right now, and calling me at this point of time can also amount to intimidation at various levels. So I don't think they will get into that space just yet.
All right. Shakti Singh asks a question which is quite common to see this question on Twitter, and I will put it to you. why only the talk about the riots without even mentioning the burning of car sevaks on the train in Godhra? Now, according to the report, the bogie was burned from inside. You quote that report, but you raise questions on the SIT report that the state machinery, RPM, was not involved in any such. This question is a bit incoherent, but essentially what he's asking, what Shakti Singh is asking is, why does your book ignore
the other side,
the killing of car sevaks on the train? I mean, I get asked this question often, but
well, Justice, there is no, recently a person who was on the run was convicted in the Godhra case, but you do not see that many convictions in the Gujarat riots, which is precisely why we speak. However, I mean, Harin Pandya was the ex-home minister. I'm speaking for his murder right now. The investigation, I would urge the authorities to also speak, I mean, to take up the case of the Harin Pandya murder or assassination, because there seems to be a lot of truth which has been hidden over the years. His wife has been demanding justice earlier from the Gujarat CM, and now he's the PM of the country in the case of her husband, and she's done this consistently. So my book is demanding justice for this man who was an RSS ideologue, ex-home minister. So I don't see it from the prism of religion, or for that matter a section. Yeah.
In fact, Godhra comes in because one of the issues which emerges quite clearly in the transcripts in your book is, and we know this from other sources as well, that Chief Minister Narendra Modi himself wanted the bodies of the Godhra victims brought and a public spectacle made in Ahmedabad. And I think Ashok Narayan talks about it.
Yeah.
How they
he refused.
As professionals, they felt this was dangerous.
Yeah.
But the CM.
He also goes on to say that he asked him not to let Praveen Togadia hold a rally in Ahmedabad. And I was watching the videos when I was writing the book of Praveen Togadia holding the rally, and I've also quoted it extensively. And it's basically a clarion call to to kill, I mean, to take revenge on the other side.
So Ashok Narayan initially denied permission, and he was told by the CM, by Mr. Modi, to override himself, and he said, give it to me in writing.
Yes. And then he looked behind it. And normally he has never, I mean, as you know, that's something which has been said consistently by every officer, that he does not give orders on paper on the phone. To just general orders. He will call people who he has faith in. For instance, as Ashok Narayan said, he would call the likes of PC Pandey. PC Pandey is the same guy who got me an appointment with Narendra Modi when I also met Narendra Modi towards the end of the investigation.
Tell us about that, because the book ends on that note.
Yeah.
But Modi had never met you before, or
no.
idea who Rana
He had met me once, at a political rally, and that was ages ago, sometime in 2007, when I was reporting for a news channel, and it was a 10-second glare that because I asked him a question. It was his first political rally during the Gujarat election. So it was 2007 and 2011 by the time I met him. Also,
They say he never forgets a face, he never forgets a name.
It was just about 10 seconds. So I think I was perhaps a forgettable face.
Right.
Also, I wasn't appearing on television, etc. And I was known as Mr. Ayyub, so I really couldn't figure. Plus, that came in handy. And the fact that, I'd gone for a great deal of transformation. I'd changed the way I looked, I'd straightened my hair, bandan, etc. But this meeting, it was almost forced on me because Mr. PC Pandey was insistent that I meet the man who was responsible for the Vibrant Gujarat bid, and he said, no, you have to meet him. He's a man of ideology, and he's one of the greatest men that this country has seen. So I said, okay, I'll have to see him, because I have to carry out the entire.
But surely you didn't take your hidden equipment.
I did. And
you had it on?
I had it on, and I don't know how I passed the metal detectors, but they were so confident, right? So I had my French guy with me, the Mike who was there with me, and he got in, and he would in the conversation he's talking about Swami Vivekananda. On the table there were books on Barack Obama, and he told me in that little bit of conversation that we had that he wants to be like Barack Obama,
right.
And he's somebody he idolizes, and then his secretary took me around and showed me books written by him or books written on him. But the same evening I was called back by Tarun and Shoma saying we can't get into that terrain. You can't do a sting on Narendra Modi because he's too big, and tomorrow if something happens, if he becomes the Prime Minister of this country, we'll all go behind bars and just come back. So that's the only meeting that I had with him.
There's a question from Jaideep Gupte. There is a real sense of despair about our justice system. Of course, this goes beyond Modi and Gujarat, but what do you think will be a just solution? Will it be through courts or some other form of reconciliation?
Only through courts.
Right.
That's what I believe in.
And so far, there's not much
to
hope for.
Yeah.
In fact, your book provides a lot of information on the Sohrabuddin, Kausarbi, Tulsiram, Prajapati fake encounter.
Yes, yes.
And we know that one of the first major legal hurdles which this government was able to clear
was a clean chit to
was the CBI Special Court in December 2014 dismissing charges against
and right after he was
Amit
made
Shah,
there,
even before the matter comes to trial, and the CBI
Absolutely.
chose not to appeal this.
Well, it's not just about Amit Shah. Look at P.P. Pandey. I mean, here was a man who was declared absconder not by the Supreme Court but by the Gujarat High Court, and he was not appearing before the court. And he was, he was taken into custody for, for killing, murdering, conspiracy, and now he has been made the DG of police, despite the matter being the case is still on, and but that says something about. I think it's not just about the judicial process. It also says something about where the politics of this country is heading right now. And as the Prime Minister of this country, Mr. Modi should certainly look into this because this is not a great.
What's interesting is that Ashok Narayan, even your conversation with Geeta Johri, who's one of the investigating officers in the Sohrabuddin case, they are willing to turn a blind eye to or justify the killing of Sohrabuddin because he had criminal antecedents and so on. But the killing of Kausarbi, which is
shocking.
really a heinous crime,
it's shocking.
Even for them, even for hardened people like them, is something that's
like
really
P.C.
beyond
Pandey says, what do you expect when you travel with a man like that? I mean, and Geeta Johri says, oh, she was living in with him. Right. That kind of attitude that you had towards.
But she also felt that was going a bit too far, though. That the case.
Yeah, but she said,
remain live for that reason.
Yes, but I didn't get into the legal part of it because that's what the officer said. Yeah. But the attitude towards Kausarbi's killing, I mean, not once did they, express their regret over Kausarbi's killing, but they said, they almost were trying to justify her killing by saying, oh, she was traveling with him and she was in a live-in relationship with him.
But Ashok Narayan seemed conflicted.
He seemed very conflicted about the fact that, and so did Rajan Priyadarshi, who said, I was against fake encounters and this government was all for fake encounters.
Mayur Panghal says the Harin Pandya murder case is a prime example of what's wrong. His parents and wife both disbelieve the official story and they are pointing fingers elsewhere. We know that trial court convicted a certain bunch of people, appeals, this was reversed, CBI wants to go further and appeal. But is there any hope that in the Harin Pandya case, at least because of the insistence of his family, truth may emerge?
I wish, his wife, I know for the longest time has been trying for a reinvestigation into the case of her husband's killing for the simple reason that she says that how could Mohammed Sufyan, who was one of the key conspirators in the case, escape 2 days after the murder when he stayed right next to the Gujarat, crime branch. How could he escape the country, and why is it that we haven't issued a red corner notice against him? Why isn't Sufyan being caught? She had various apprehensions regarding the investigation. So I think she has a valid point there.
Okay. Sumit Saxena asks a kind of contrary question. He says, had you released your story in 2014 with the help of AAP or Congress, it would have informed the electorate better before they pressed the button. Don't you think that is more important than the perception of it being politically motivated?
The same people have turned back and said, she was the girl who was trying to, help the Congress win the election. Yeah.
All right, so here's slightly different kind of question. Praveen Kumar asks, are you in contact with Mike today? Did you tell him about the book coming out?
No, I did not. I really did not want to get him into trouble, but I know for a fact that Mike is very much in India and he speaks fluent Hindi now.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Dada Khalandar asks, since Modi overtook Advani, the PM candidate projected by RSS, and later he sidelined many senior leaders in his government, so considering the timing of your book release, don't you feel it would rather help Advani, the Advani gang and RSS to fail Modi?
Yeah,
so conspiracy theories abound.
Oh, totally.
Is this all done at the behest of Advani?
well, the investigating officer in the Harin Pandya says that Advani was hand in glove in the Harin Pandya murder. So I don't know how I'm really helping Advani in this case.
Right. But what's interesting is, if you look at the trajectory of Mr. Modi coming to Gujarat, surviving the 2002 controversy. He was very close to Advani, and of course the two had a falling out. So clearly, politics, you have shifting alliances.
Absolutely.
Tanveer Alam asks or says, some liberals say that convictions in the Godhra riots, he means Gujarat riots, is unprecedented, and they compare it to 1984 to drive home the point that some progress has been made on the dispensation of justice in 2002. What are your views about this? So in other words, the number of people convicted is much more in 2002 than 84. So how do you explain this, and what's your...
I really don't think you can compare two massacres or genocides or riots.
No, I don't think it's comparing them.
Yeah,
but
I don't think it's right to I don't think it's right to draw parallels also between. Although they were, I would believe that they were. There was an element of state sponsorship in both 84 and the 2002 riots. You know, when Justice Sri Krishna was writing the foreword to this book, he said one of the reasons why I'm writing this foreword is because what I see in your book and what I read in your book and the transcripts, there seems to be, it seems to run parallelly with what I saw in Maharashtra. Of course, the difference was these officers deposed before me, and that's how I saw it. But in this case, these officers almost deposed unofficially before you. Right. So he says it's the criminal politician complicity is very clear in both the cases, right. And unfortunately, there have been convictions in neither of the cases.
Right. Okay, here's a factual question by Mayur Panghal. Are Kurnani and Babu Bajrangi still out on parole/bail?
I think they are. Yeah.
Exactly. You said in your book, Pushkar Singh asks, that you met Modi as a movie director. Can Gujarat CM office confirm it, and why didn't you put it forward? Well, I mean, we know in your narrative that finally your editors said, don't pursue the story any further.
Yeah. I'm sure they can confirm this though.
Yeah. But one of the interesting, I mean, there's multiple ways in which one can read your book. One can say that this provides fragments of a truth which needs persistent and professional investigation by the state in order to uncover what happened. But you also get glimpses of a glimpse into the mindset of people who occupy positions in the higher bureaucracy and the higher in the institutional system, and some of the views are quite frightening. I mean, they're the anti-Muslim prejudice, for example, their belief that the history of communal violence in India is the history of Hindus getting attacked by Muslims.
Yeah, and invasion by Mughals.
To have senior police officers believe this kind of narrative, and the thought that this informs the way in which they handle. One
of the reasons, in fact, when my editors refused to publish the story, they said we need more evidence, and I said I can go back and do this. But one thing that I pointed out to them is that a narrative was eerily similar to what we see now. This entire bit about Mughals invading India and kind of communalizing the situation. If you see the narrative given by the officers when they talk, it's always about these Babur and Akbar, they invaded India. इन्होंने ये किया, गुजरात में इन्होंने ये बचाया, उसके बाद हमने किया, उसके बाद फिर हमने जाके किया. So that communal discourse, that kind of polarization and the polarized view, and the fact that they are relieved post the riots, that everybody has been put in their place, is very evident. I think the book is not just about facts but also about the mindset of officials who were in power at that point of time, that that this book clearly points out to.
Right, and this idea that orders are never given in writing, orders are verbally communicated. Does that suggest that the quest for justice also has, you're never going to find evidence of the sort that the IPC or the CRPC requires in these kinds of incidents of mass violence?
But when you have people in power, like a Home Secretary who goes on to say that when Rahul Sharma, who was the officer who saved many Muslim lives during the Gujarat riots,
and who was punished later,
was sent, or Kuldeep Sharma, they should not have been punished because they actually did a good job. And as a Home Secretary, and Ashok Narayan, who was then the Chakravarti, who was then the DG, recommended that he actually be given a promotion and not be suspended from service, and Modi said no, they had to be. At this point, now these are people who were in a position of power, who can now depose before the commissions of inquiry. So there is hope, because there can be a reinvestigation into this, and the commissions of inquiry should speak to them about this.
I mean, I've always believed that 84 and 2002 were state organized.
Yeah.
With the complicity of
it's just that the people,
executive. You may never have that kind of proof, but I would say that proof of guilt can be constructed, can be inferred from the post-violence handling. So the fact that neither Rajiv Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister of India in 84, or Shri Narendra Modi, who was Chief Minister of Gujarat for 10 years after the riots,
only difference is
after the riots, bothered to actually deliver justice.
The only difference is that Titler is not the Congress president, unlike Amit Shah.
Right.
And in both the cases, I think with Amit Shah, with Narendra Modi, and with say Rajiv Gandhi and the others, is that they chose to look the other way because it kind of helped create an image for them that we are teaching them a lesson.
Right. Okay. Sunil Paul asks: is it possible to do a story about these powerful people without support from other powerful people? In other words, if you are an unconnected individual, without, I guess he's implying, or
that I've taken
maybe he's
political
not
help.
implying, but is he? Maybe he's getting at the fact that this is a difficult enterprise for somebody to do.
And OSD to a minister yesterday asked me, wrote on Twitter, self-published my foot, and I said, well, in that case, can I please send you my HDFC loans and you could help in paying the EMIs? I mean, well, that's all I can say right now.
Right. And a lot of questions essentially about the politics of this. The GC Raigar, Singhal, Geeta George, these are all, it's interesting how police officers who sailed against the wind, all had their careers come to an abrupt end. In one place they joke, I think Narayan jokes about how Sharma is sent off to the Department of Wool. Terrible fate. Sharma,
in fact, PC Pandey says, why should he not be sent to the sheep and wool department? He should have favored the government.
Yeah.
He's so brazenly saying that, and mind you, he's the same guy who arranged for my meeting with Narendra Modi.
Right.
So these are the people who get access. You toe the line. In fact, something very interesting happened. So if you see, I've made this note in the book that when I'm meeting Ashok Narayan, Kailash Nathan, who was then the chief secretary or the principal secretary to Modi, walks in and he says, "Sir, वो आपने जो बोला था मोदी जी को, वो टिकट दिलाने के लिए आपके brother-in-law को वो हो गया है Himachal Pradesh se." So that's that also hints that some of them did not also speak out because in a way they were getting some kind of favors from the government, and then they used to get these government houses and post retirement assignments later.
It's also quite shocking how after getting out on bail, virtually all of these senior officers who were charged with serious crimes are actually back in service.
Yeah, in fact, Chakravarti laments the fact that you talk about me siding with the government. Have I got any post-retirement rewards? He said, we can't brush everyone with the.
Right. Okay, so we're running out of time, but Lata Shankar has one question. Maybe we'll make it the last one. Where are you going next with this? It would be such a shame if this does not lead to anything. Also, the conventional media appears to have completely blocked this. Your comment. Is it true that the mainstream print media and television media has ignored your book entirely?
Well, barring the Indian Express, which published a report, or a first post, or of course online media portals, yes. I have not seen any mainstream media covering it. I'm surprised though with news channels almost pretending it never happened. So it's a bit surprising for me. I would not make a statement, but it's a bit surprising for me. Yes,
I'm not surprised because I know that when the special CBI court discharged Mr. Amit Shah in December last year, I spoke to a couple of anchors and I said, look, this is a great show, as to have a discussion on. And one anchor confessed that they were told not to have a chat.
As Rajdeep said, and at the book launch, most of the news anchors and most senior journalists actually now work on the basis that if we do a particular story, that particular BJP leader would not send their spokesperson, or that the party would not send their spokesperson, or they would not get access to certain leaders. So that is, I think, what is driving most senior journalists these days, unfortunately.
Right. Mayur Panghal has another question. Has any other state ever reappointed officers on bail for murder?
Uttar Pradesh might have, going by the track record, or say Manipur, but I don't really have proof of that, so I would not comment on it.
But I would say that internationally, you would be very hard pressed in any democracy to find
absolutely
a situation where an agency like the CBI having framed charges of murder or complicity for murder against officers
and conspiracy and extortion,
and then they get bail and then they are brought back into service. I think this is a very negative thing, but we will leave that aside. Last question. How tiring was the journey to get this published? I have been hearing a lot of stories around this. Your comment. So you're at the end of this very long, painful process. You've had publishers, you've had your editors say no, you've had publishers say no, and you've had to bring out this book by yourself. There is legal and political risk. There's also financial risks that you are running. Where do you plan to go with this now? A lot of questions about, can this be turned into a movie? What kind of follow-up can be done? Where do you plan to take this?
I don't know. A lot of people have been asking me, "Oh, you must be very happy. You must be thrilled with all the coverage that you are getting, or it's the number one on the Amazon." It feels good that it's people are reading it. But honestly, at this point of time, I'm really numb because because of the kind of indifference that I've seen in the last 5 years from various media organizations. That the kind of pressure that I've faced, the kind of rejections that I've faced. That right now, for a few days, I think I'll just be numb and indifferent myself because it's just out of my system. So that's a huge hurdle that I've crossed. So right now I'm just taking it one step at a time. I'm just for me the biggest hurdle right now is to get those 5,000 copies which I've just got into, which have just gone into print, to get them to some bookstores and to Amazon and to put the stickers on. So I'm taking one step at a time.
Right. Well, there is a comment from Niranjan Kumar that I want to, extremely sad that a biased journalist is getting this kind of publicity. People are making money by defaming our Honorable PM. Wah Mere India. Well, I want to say to this gentleman, Niranjan Kumar, that Wah Mere India is all about media asking questions. And just because somebody who was chief minister becomes a prime minister doesn't mean that the media has will give up its right to ask questions. I think any society, any democracy where the act of asking questions invites responses of the kind that you are giving, I worry about the fate of this kind of society. I think the kind of issues that, Rana, you've raised in your book, I can't say that you provided neat answers to any of the questions, but I think the fact that more than 1,000 people were killed in Gujarat in 2002, beginning with the burning of the train and subsequently heinous attacks in Ahmedabad and other places in Gujarat, this is a reality. Justice has still not been done fully. We still don't know how and why this happened and who allowed it to happen. The fact that individuals were killed in fake encounters is a charge that has been accepted by the highest courts of this country. We still haven't seen any progress in terms of the actual prosecution or trials in those cases. But I think the fact that you've raised these questions, the fact that you have used unorthodox methods which not everybody may agree with, but as you said, compelling public interest drove you to do that, I think has made your book a valuable contribution to what we know about the state of Gujarat since 2002. It's uncomfortable reading. I don't think anybody will feel happy to know that people in high positions have these kinds of views or narrate the kind of incidents that they do. But I think it's important that people read it with an open mind, and that the powers that be, courts, investigative agencies, if not now, but at some time in the future, will look at this material and say it provides a basis for us to take our investigation further.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us
in
this
Siddharth.
conversation. And for those of you who've been watching or listening, thank you so much for being with us in this episode of Facebook Live. This is Siddharth Varadarajan of The Wire signing out.